All right, ready to go live? It's good and decent. All right.
No entiendo.
You could have possibly died. And I do think a lot of the anti-vax people, hundreds of thousands of
Okay, welcome everyone. Randy, I think we can get started.
Okay. Welcome everybody. Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Randy. I'm a tenant leader with Counsel, member of the Right to Counsel. Is somebody got their unmuted because we can hear somebody in the background?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, you got to mute yourself. Okay,
Laura Govan, I'm here. I'm hoping they can hear me. I don't know.
okay, we're starting right now, and is everybody on? You have to mute yourself and wait for the interpreters and the us that's running the meeting. We're the only one speaking right now. Thank you. Now, like I said, my name is Randy Diller. I'm a tenant leader with Counsel, and I'm a member of the Right to Counsel Steering Committee. Thank you all for coming to the statewide town hall on the Right to Counsel for all. First, I'm going to turn it over to the interpreters so they can make an announcement about how to access the interpretation. Louis? Louis, is you on?
Hello, everybody.
Hi, everyone. It's Pablo from Casa. The reason we can't hear Luis is because the interpretation feature is turned on. So choose the language English if for you all to choose. It's open. So down at the bottom right, as you can see in the screen, you can select your channel. So you can do that for English. Y para mi gente en español, ya aprendimos la función de interpretación. Entonces, si pueden ver ahí abajo en el botón en su pantalla. Que
All right,
dice,
testing in English. You should be able to hear the interpreter now.
Go ahead, Randy.
The announcement was just being made in Spanish, and I'm now speaking in the English channel. Randy will continue.
Don't thank the people, Louis, on the English channel heard you. Or they would be
Thank you.
supposed to hear you.
Yes, I was just doing a sign check as Pablo explained the Spanish instructions.
Okay.
So just go ahead. Keep going, Randy. You got this.
A una unidad entre la comunidad y la policía, porque es sabia que hay atención.
Please silence your microphones except for the speaker.
You're on mute, Randy, so you're gonna have to start over and unmute yourself.
On mute. Thank you, Pablo. I'm excited to be here tonight. As you know, early this month, the state allowed New York pandemic-related eviction protections to expire, leaving hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers at risk of evictions and homeless. Now more than ever, we need permanent solutions to protect our homes and our rights, ensuring that all tenants access New York State have a right to counsel in the critical and urgent need. Last summer, our state right counsel legislation was introduced in New York State Assembly and Senate by Assembly Member LaToya Joyner and Senator Rachel May. This is important legislation strengthening the right to counsel in New York City and would guarantee tenants across New York State the right to have a lawyer when facing an eviction. You heard, that is right. All tenants, all cases in every part of New York would have a right to counsel. One more time, all tenants, all cases in every part of New York would have the right to counsel. I'll turn it over to Judy. Okay.
Before that, should we let people know how to go to Spanish interpretation again?
Now,
Si están, si quieren escuchar la reunión en español, pueden presionar el globito que está abajo y seleccionar idioma español. Repito, si quieren escuchar en español, pueden seleccionar.
Elvira's giving the instructions for accessing interpretation.
Que es un globito y ahí pueden seleccionar español.
If you can hear my voice, that means you did it right.
Thanks, Luis and Elvira. Randy, you can continue.
okay. The state right to counsel legislation is a part of Housing Court Must Change campaign. A statewide campaign launched in 2020 to transform the court from an eviction machine place that holds landlords accountable, upholding tenants' right and enable tenants to remain in their homes. Our demands during COVID-19 pandemic and beyond include slowing down eviction cases and expanding the right to counsel across the state so all tenants have and know about their rights and are emboldened to organize and fight to stop evictions. Right to counsel proved to stop evictions. 84% in New York City who has a right to counsel won their case. Repeat that. 84% of tenants in New York City who had the right to counsel won their case. And in New York, landlords are suing tenants 30% less. I hope everybody tonight understand what I just said. 84%, since we have had the right to counsel, have won their cases, and landlords have taken us tenants to court, less than 30%. We started a movement in New York, and after New York passed the right to counsel, 9 other cities passed the right to counsel and proved powerful everywhere, with other cities also seeing a dramatic reduction in evictions. 9 other cities is following us, New York City. We must continue to lead the way. While 3 states now have the right to counsel legislation that we introduced in New York is the most comprehensive across the state. Nearly all landlords have lawyers, while the vast majority of tenants do not. With 1.2 million households behind on their rent due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and landlords are actively helping trying to evict more than 236,000. Now remember one thing tonight, everybody. 1.2 million households is behind on their rent. And it's not caused because they couldn't pay their rent. It's caused because they lost their job. And it's caused because we are in the middle of a pandemic. Remember that. These people didn't quit their jobs. They lost their jobs because of a pandemic. And that's what it's about right here tonight, about 1.2 million people that's behind on their rent. And landlords are trying to evict more than 236,000 tenants statewide. That's why we're here tonight. Make sure everybody that's on this Zoom understand that 1.2 million tenants is behind on their rent. and make sure landlords is getting ready to take 236,000 to court. And it's not their fault. And I repeat that. It is because of the pandemic. And I'm going to turn this over to my co-MC, Mildred.
Good evening. My name is Mildred, and I'm a tenant leader with CASA. We have an exciting program tonight. Let's get started with some group agreements for our town hall to make sure we have a successful and engaging meeting. We're asking that everyone agrees to the following group agreements. As you know, the Right to Counsel Coalition is committed to language justice and ensuring that everyone can participate regardless of language. We want to make sure this town hall is as accessible as possible. The interpreters, Luis and Myra, will be doing simultaneous interpretations tonight. A reminder to all speakers to speak slowly and clearly and pause after you speak to allow the interpreters to catch up. We're building community and a statewide movement for right to counsel. It's important that we can see and acknowledge each other. Please turn on your video if you can. We have a tight program and we want to make sure everyone on the agenda has time to speak. So please, make sure you're muted when you are not talking. If you're joining by phone, you can mute and unmute yourself by pressing *6. Ask your questions in the chat and an organizer will respond to you. If we have time at the end of the program, we can also answer your questions then. A reminder to all speakers, let us know who you are. When you speak, please share your name and pronouns. Can we all move forward with these group agreements? I hope you all say yes. Thank you. We're also joined tonight by supporters and state legislators from across the state, including New York City, Albany, Rochester, Syracuse, Rockland County, and more. Thank you all for being here. Now, I'm going to hand it over to the lead sponsors, Senator Rachel May and Assembly Member Latoya Joyner, to say some remarks, and then we'll share a short presentation that will explain what the statewide right to counsel legislation is and how it will help stop evictions.
All right, thank you, Mildred. Thank you, Randy. And thank you to the interpreters also. I am Senator Rachel May. I go by she and her, and I represent Syracuse and a region of central New York. I am so grateful to all of you for the hard work you are doing to make sure that tenants across the state have this right. I want to thank my colleagues in the Senate who are here. Senator
Rachel, you're muted.
I am? You sure?
I hear you. I hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we heard you.
Okay. I want to share, thank my colleagues who are here, Senator Reichlin-Melnick, Senator Sepulveda, and then a number have sent staff, and that includes Senator Prasad, Senator Skoufis, Senator Mannion, Senator Comrie, Senator Kavanaugh. If there are more, please put your, mention it in the chat. I especially want to call out my colleagues from New York City because your support means a lot. You already have this in New York City, and it means a lot that you care that the rest of us have nice things too around the state. This is so important. As Randy said, if you are facing eviction and you don't have a lawyer, you're almost certainly up against a lawyer who knows exactly how to navigate the system. And the complexities of an eviction case are far too great to expect somebody who's not only facing eviction, but have all of the trauma associated with that, and probably a lot of other underlying issues as well. So this is just so important that we be able to provide this service to tenants all across the state. And I am very grateful to all of you who are working to get this over the finish line, and to my colleague in the Assembly, Assemblymember Joyner. I'll turn it over to you. Thank you all.
Is anybody here from Latoya's office? Latoya, is you here?
I think they are having conference in the Assembly.
Hello. Randy, Senator May, this is Jamie Gilkey. I'm Assemblywoman Joyner's Chief of Staff. They were called into conference for 6 o'clock tonight. So she's not going to be able to join you personally, but she just wanted me to thank you all. Both Randy and Millie are constituents of Assemblywoman Joyner's. Senator May and her office with Zach and Eric over there have been great partners on this issue. Malika, thanks for pulling the group together and keeping things going. And of course, the translators who are having to keep up with all of us tonight. This is a very, very important issue to Assemblywoman Joyner. We do want to get it done so that it's on a statewide basis. And also the protections in the bill itself build upon what's already been accomplished in New York City and would help expand access to legal counsel for the millions of people who live in the city. So with that, I'm just going to continue to listen in so I can report back to Assemblywoman Joyner on the activities of the evening, sorry.
Well, thank you, Senator May and Jamie. We appreciate your remarks. I would like to acknowledge Senator Elijah Reichland-Melnick, who is also co-sponsoring the legislation, but he has to head out early this evening. Senator, if you're here, would you like to say a few words and share your commitment?
Thank you so much, and thank you for getting my name exactly correct in the way that you pronounced it. It is not an easy one to do, and a lot of people don't. So I am really thrilled to be here with you all today, and just grateful to my colleague Senator May for introducing this bill. I think it is such an important thing when you talk about something as important as whether somebody is going to be able to continue to live in their home, that they would have to go through the legal system without benefit of a lawyer up against potentially a landlord with high-powered lawyer or lawyers who are seeking to evict them from an apartment. We should not send people into that place. We should not send people into court without the benefit of somebody that can speak for them, who knows how to navigate this system. I once had years ago to go to small claims court to try to get back the deposit from my landlord who refused to return it. And I somehow was able to navigate that. I am not a lawyer. I certainly was not a lawyer then, but it was incredibly stressful. He did come with a lawyer, and the only reason I was able to get it back was, it was such a clear-cut case of them trying to scam me out of it. But there are many more serious cases and many more complicated cases. And if we as a state government can do anything, we should be helping people stay in their homes as much as possible and give them a fair and fighting chance to do that through passing this legislation. So I'm proud to co-sponsor it in the Senate and look forward, hopefully, to voting for it if we can get it to the Senate floor this year.
All right. Thank you very much. Now I'm going to pass it over to Nigel and Liselan, who is going to explain what our statewide legislation does and why tenants across the state need the right.
Hello. Hi, good afternoon. This is Senator Sepulveda. I too have to run to another event, so if I can be given the opportunity to speak now.
Okay, go ahead.
Is that a possibility? Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you so much, and I'm sorry for interrupting, but I want to also thank Senator May and my colleague from the Bronx, Assemblywoman Joyner. I was personally a housing lawyer for about 30 years. And I saw personally the abuses that occur with many of our tenants who are not represented by counsel. It makes a vast difference. Housing laws are so complicated, and there's so many of them that many times our tenants don't realize that simple technicalities can get cases dismissed. And many times, even though the court representative, the court attorney goes over the stipulations with the tenants, they're not as forceful about the tenants' rights. And so if in the city of New York, we've been fortunate that the mayor is going to continue the programs that began with Mayor de Blasio to continue funding counsels for our tenants. But this piece of legislation is extremely critical. It'll make a major difference when you consider the fact that with the end of the moratorium, that people are going to be facing evictions and they have to know all of their rights, because if they don't, it will be to their detriment. Now, if anybody needs assistance, as I indicated before, I was a housing lawyer for about 30 years, so I know a lot of the laws. So if anybody needs assistance, I've already put my information on the chat, and I'm happy to work with anybody. Even if you're not in my district and you need information, happy to provide whatever knowledge I acquired in 30 years in housing court. Thank you very much, everybody. Stay safe and God bless.
Well, as I said, I'm going to hand it over now to Nigel and Lisa, who will explain what our statewide legislation does and why tenants across the state need the right to counsel.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nigel, and I'm going to talk about our legislation to guarantee the right to counsel for all. So what is statewide right to counsel?
All right. Let me take a picture of the presentation.
Statewide right to counsel guarantees all tenants across New York State the right to a free lawyer when facing an eviction. Our legislation strengthens right to counsel in New York City and extends the right to every tenant in the state. Statewide right to counsel would also require that tenants be represented throughout their entire case, not just when they show up in court. This includes legal advice, advocacy, and assistance, and require the state to contract with nonprofit legal service organizations to provide right to counsel, and with nonprofit community-based organizations to provide tenants' rights education and tenant organizing. How would this work? Statewide right to counsel would create a New York State Office of Civil Justice that would administer and manage the implementation of right to counsel statewide, which includes contracting with nonprofit legal services organizations to provide counsel to tenants, contracting to nonprofit community-based organizations to provide tenants rights education and tenant organizing, which includes hosting Know Your Rights trainings, supporting tenants associations, and referring tenants to legal services, and hold public hearings and produce annual reports on implementation and financial auditing. You might also be wondering, since tenants in New York City have the right to counsel, how would they benefit from the state law once it's passed? Our state legislation would extend the right to counsel to tenants with incomes above 200% of the federal poverty level, cover more kinds of cases, including repairs and harassment cases and appeals. It would cover tenants living in public housing and those receiving subsidies like Section 8. And as mentioned earlier, it would put more obligations on the courts, judges, and landlords to ensure that all tenants know about and can use their right to counsel that currently aren't required by the New York City law. So why does right to counsel matter? right to counsel changes the power relationship between landlords and tenants in and outside of housing court. When tenants have the right to a lawyer, it reaffirms that tenants are worthy of representation, to know their rights, to be respected, and that the government will guarantee their legal defense. Right to counsel protects tenants' rights and emboldens more tenants to fight for their homes. Every year, landlords try to evict hundreds of thousands of Black and brown New Yorkers. Many are immigrants and most are women. Every year, landlords try to evict, right to counsel doesn't just stop evictions, it helps fight back against the displacement of people of color. For many landlords, evictions are essential to their business model. Landlords evict tenants because they have power and because it increases their profits, not because the law supports them. Right to counsel disrupts this business model by keeping tenants in their homes and stopping displacements. Now I'm going to turn it over to Liesl from the Rochester Citywide Tenant Union, who will share more about the right to counsel movement in New York and across the country and why we need to expand across the state.
Thank you so much, Najel. This is Liesl from Rochester, and I'm going to be talking about the right to counsel movement. So in 2017, the Right to Counsel New York City Coalition won the first right to counsel in the country, making New York the first city in the country to establish this for low-income tenants facing eviction. And we won that through tenant outreach, organizing, and coalition building, through direct action, mobilization, and advocacy, by created and earned media attention. We conducted an analysis of the costs and benefits of right to counsel, and we developed and led an implementation plan to ensure right to counsel success. So right to counsel is supporting these campaigns across the country. There are currently 12 cities and 3 states that have a right to counsel law. Detroit, Michigan, and 8 other states, including us in New York, have launched campaigns to win right to counsel in their states. And why do we need it? We need right to counsel because it is one of the most effective ways of stopping an eviction. In New York City, 86% of the tenants who have right to counsel won their cases and were able to stay in their homes. 86%. Evictions decline more than 5 times faster in neighborhoods where tenants have right to counsel than those that did not. Evictions across the county are down by nearly 40%. Landlords are suing tenants less. Eviction filings have dropped by 30%, and defaults dropped by more than 30%, which means that more tenants are showing up in housing court to fight their cases. So why do New York State tenants need right to counsel? Because it's effective. Across the country, 7 cities now have right to counsel, passed before 2021, and have seen up to a 77% reduction in evictions. San Francisco saw a 10% drop, while evictions across the city are down by nearly 40%. Cleveland found that within the first 6 months of having right to counsel, 93% of tenants with a right to counsel lawyer avoided eviction or an involuntary move. Right to counsel also protects, has been proven to provide positive economic impacts on cities and states across the country. Research from the financial firm Stout has repeatedly demonstrated that investing in an eviction right to counsel is a good fiscal investment. Right to counsel creates more positive economic impacts and cost savings than the cost of providing legal representation, saving millions in public money that would otherwise be spent on shelter and emergency room costs, homelessness services, and more. New York State has an eviction crisis that has ravaged New York communities for long before the COVID-19 pandemic began. 1.2 million households are unable to pay rent. Landlords have sued more than 226,000 tenants in eviction courts across the state, and 92,000 New Yorkers are experiencing homelessness. In eviction courts statewide, the majority of cases are initiated by landlords, and almost all landlords have lawyers in eviction cases, while most tenants do not. This eviction crisis has hit tenants in every corner of this state. From Buffalo to Long Island, we wanted to end by highlighting the reach of the crisis and where landlords have sued the tenants most across the state. In New York City, there are over 200,000, Suffolk County, 4,800, Nassau County, 3,300, Rochester, where I'm from, 2,900, Buffalo, 2,700, Yonkers, 2,700, Albany, 1,200, Syracuse, 1,100, Mount Vernon, 1,000, and Schenectady, 990. Lastly, to drive home just how much every tenant in New York State needs the right to counsel, in December 2021, eviction courts issued more than 650 possessory judgments across the state. A possessory judgment awards the apartment back to the landlord and means the tenant has to move out. Approximately 80% of those judgments were issued in courts outside of New York City, where tenants do not have the right to counsel. Now I'll hand it back to Mildred, who will move us on to the next section of our program.
Okay, Mildred, before you get started, Mildred, I'm asking the host to unmute everybody right now.
One second.
Get back to the program. And what I want to do, if we was in a building, you know, we organizers and the tenants, we would do a chant. So don't be ashamed to do this in your home. Okay, I'm in my home. My son is over here playing the game right now. And what I want, when I say, hey, hey, ho, ho, I want y'all to say, all evictions got to go. You understand? When I say, hey, hey, ho, ho, you say all evictions have got to go. All right, you ready? Hey, hey, ho, ho.
All evictions got to go.
Oh, wait a minute. Come on. We can do better than this, all right? Come on now. There's enough of us on here. You know how to do this. You know, I hope we're not waking nobody up in our house, but let's try this.
Right,
hey,
yeah.
hey, ho, ho.
All evictions got to go.
Hey, hey, ho, ho.
All evictions got to go.
All right, you can mute everybody, and Mildred, turn it back over to you.
Okay.
Mildred, you're gonna have to unmute yourself.
You muted everybody, I forgot. Okay, well, thanks for the slides that we just saw from Nigel and Lisa. We're gonna now hear from some tenants and lawyers, but I must advise you, you only have 2 to 3 minutes because we have quite a few speakers and we have a timekeeper. So if you overstep your time, the timekeeper is gonna cut you off. So I'm gonna first start off with a gentleman named Ronald. He's a tenant leader with the Northwest Bronx Community and Clergy Coalition. Ronald?
How you doing? I live in the Gun Hill. I live on Gun Hill Road in the Bronx. I'm a retired captain from the New York City Department of Correction. I served on Rikers Island for 22 years. The reason I mention that is because my story has to deal with my daughter who lived up in Orange County, Middletown. Her landlord was harassing her, constantly stopping by without notice. He would constantly tell her he's going to have her evicted, she's going to leave. And in Orange County, there is no right to counsel, at least there wasn't at that time. And she would, so when this gentleman found out that I was a captain on Rikers Island, all of a sudden his tone changed. He stopped her without notice. Had she known what her rights were and she had a right to counsel, I would not have had to come in as an authority figure. He would have known that he couldn't get away with that nonsense in a court. He would have known not to leave her alone. And the worst part about it is, as Rachel May said, my daughter's bipolar. So when he put this stress on her, it sent her to the, all right? And that hurt a lot. This guy would abuse his rights as a landlord because they don't have right to counsel. She didn't know her rights. And I knew that the laws were different in Orange County. And my daughter ended up in a hospital several times because she couldn't take the stress. So that's why we need right to counsel throughout the state, not just here in New York City.
Okay, thank you very much, Ronald, for that. I'm now going to introduce Carolyn, a tenant and member of the Ithaca Tenant Union. Carolyn?
Yes, good evening. My name is Carolyn, and I have rented in Ithaca for almost 10 years now. During the pandemic, I fell into a deep depression. The pandemic upended many aspects of my life, and I was grateful to have the stability of my home, where I had lived for 3 years. But then in spring of last year, I lost my job and fell behind in rent. I was deeply ashamed. I began looking for new, less expensive place, a new, less expensive place to live, but I couldn't afford to move. Initially afraid of upsetting my landlord, I was reluctant to file a hardship declaration. I finally filed one once I learned I could also apply to the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, or ERAP, to pay my rental arrears. My landlord also completed her portion of the ERAP application. However, after I asserted my legal right to 24 hours notice to enter my apartment, my landlord began threatening to evict me. Threatening to not take ERAP, and attempted to blacklist me with other landlords in Ithaca. We have a less than 5% vacancy rate, so it's really hard to find a place to live, and you really don't want landlords upset with you. I spoke to Law New York, which is the local legal aid here in Tompkins County. They told me they couldn't help me because although I was experiencing retaliatory landlord harassment, I hadn't been served with any paperwork, and they didn't have the capacity to help. If right to counsel existed, my landlord was harassing me, I could go to housing court and initiate a harassment case and have representation, and better, advocate for myself. Ultimately, I was later served with eviction paperwork, with a notice of petition and petition. I went back to Law New York, and this time they told me, well, you've been served, but at this point I was working, so I had a job and I didn't meet their strict income requirements, so they couldn't represent me. And that was really difficult because I was, navigating this situation on my own, even though I had experienced a really big loss of income that year. Their income guidelines look at the snapshot in time where you are now. And the income I was making a living wage. So I just didn't qualify for services through Law New York. The harassment got worse. My landlord, removed all the seating from the common areas in a furnished apartment, all of the dining room chairs, the living room chairs. She left the couch, but took the couch cushions. It was like very much get out. she moved a family in with like a loud, aggressive dog, right? Her family members would show up without notice and like yell at me and threaten to, lock my belongings in a room. And it was just very difficult because I didn't have any recourse. In addition, my landlord, she repeatedly lied to me. She threatened to use her connections with elected government officials to evict me. So because I had a pending ERAP application, that does come with eviction protections. And so I did write to the court and inform them of my application after I was served with the paperwork. And so because my landlord could not move forward with my holdover eviction, right, there was further escalation. And she threatened to have government representatives intervene and fast track my eviction, was the term she used. And I was really, afraid because I was navigating the situation alone with my landlord and her attorney. I was at a real disadvantage. If right to counsel were passed in New York, I would have, once I was served with paperwork, I would have been able to have a lawyer represent me, interface with her attorney, push back on some of the really ridiculous demands I don't even have the time to get into here, but really it would have been life-changing. It would have been a much less stressful situation for me. Another thing my landlord did was, because she couldn't move forward with the ERAP application, because I had a pending ERAP application, she actually called ERAP and requested that demanded that they withdraw my application. And then they just kind of did that. And I got an email that they were withdrawing my application. I know, right? I see some of the faces. I got an email, they were withdrawing my application, and I called in a panic. And, they went through the notes and they said, oh yeah, I see your landlord. Your landlord is the one who requested this. And I just checked with my supervisor, and under no circumstances is a landlord supposed to be able to withdraw an application on behalf of a tenant. And, all of this is ridiculous. And if I had a lawyer while all of that was going on, that lawyer could have, worked with OTDA, who administers ERAP, could have worked with my landlord's attorney and, helped me advocate for myself. So, ultimately, there are a lot of protections that exist in New York State in theory, but without a mechanism to enforce them, right? Without the right to representation to help you navigate the system and all of these complex rules that that the landlords have the benefit of navigating with counsel, tenants, we're always going to be at a disadvantage. And we're always going to, be more vulnerable to homelessness.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying, dear. That's why we're fighting so hard for this to pass for the entire state of New York. That's what we're fighting for. Well, thank you very much. It's very sad to hear what you're saying, Carolyn, but we're going to get this through, believe it. Okay, the next person we're going to hear is from Tina, a lawyer with Just Cause in Rochester.
Hi, I'm Tina Monchiport Foster, an attorney and the executive director for Just Cause. And we are providing legal representation right now in Monroe County and Rochester to everyone that asks us for it, which means everyone that knows to call our hotline, everyone that we're able to represent in court on the day of. But most people still default or don't show up or are not present in court. And the right to counsel is necessary in order to make sure that judges and the people in the court system take steps to make sure that people know that they have access to a lawyer. Because what we have right now in Rochester is a system where everyone has already been funded that everybody gets access to an attorney. And there are attorneys sitting there ready, willing, and able to represent people. But without the right to counsel, without a law that mandates it, it's up to an individual judge or community to make sure that that is actually being implemented. So I think that the main purpose I see for our community and other communities that even have services for this is that it makes it so that it can't just be by fiat. Somebody is in a good mood, city council decides to fund it this month. And then after the pandemic right now, all the COVID attention to this issue and the funding, frankly, may go away. And so we have a moment right now to pass the right to counsel to make this a permanent fixture of our legal system, that people should not be forced to defend these cases by themselves and without the benefit of having lawyers. And we need to take advantage of this moment, because I think this is a very unique moment for us, where people are realizing just how important having a lawyer by your side is, in order to make sure that all of the other protections and assistance and rights that are being given are actually fulfilled. So thank you very much for letting me weigh in on this. And I appreciate also, since I was a tenant many years ago and lived in subsidized housing in Rochester, I can tell you that the information about services and things that are available in the community, that information isn't going to get out unless we have laws that say that all of the services need to be provided, and the system has the obligation to make sure that people know about it, rather than expecting people to figure that out on their own. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Next, we'll hear from Marina from CASA in the Bronx. Marina?
Hola, buenas noches a todos. Mi nombre es María. Good evening to everyone. My name is Karina Quiroz. Well, I am here today because I would like to share my story, which I believe is very similar to many of the people that have suffered during this pandemic. Me, as many of the other tenants in New York, I lost my job on March 15 of 2020. My expenses went up. After spending 7 weeks without being able to resolve the economic situation, I had to choose either my phone, public service, food, or to pay my rent. And this is very clear, right? I didn't have money for the rent. Being left without a job on March 15, on April 15, I had the landlord harassing me. I had to find the money to be able to pay his rent. He brought me a court paper telling me if I didn't pay, he will take me to court. And the constant harassment started day, night. He would show up at any given day, any given time, in the morning, at night, 7 a.m., 10 a.m. It was complete harassment. I got in touch with CASA. After I found out about CASA, my story changed. I filled out the paperwork. I filled this paperwork out through CASA. I applied for ERAP through CASA. And through that, the level of harassment from the landlord went down. But they would call and they would say I had to look for help. By any means, I would have to pay the rent, that I couldn't be here if I didn't pay the rent. Well, my worry was so big that I became ill. I had a stress crisis. I didn't know how to resolve my situation. I thought that I was in a big, big problem. Now Now that we don't have this protection against the eviction, I feel like I'm in the same situation. We need tenant protections in the courts, and the 35 millions that is being proposed to provide legal services in all the courts in the northern part of New York, this is not enough to support this housing crisis. Each tenant that is facing an eviction in the state of New York needs a lawyer and needs the support of a community organizer so that they can fight their case. And the current proposal is not going to help us with that. We need a lawyer for tenants. We need these lawyers so that they can be helped with their case. And they need representation in any kind of case. We cannot let this happen to a person.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to my testimony.
Thank you, Marina. We're just going through. The next person we hear from is Lucila. She's from the Flatbush Tenant Coalition in Brooklyn.
Hi, good evening. My name is Lucila. I live in East Flatbush. I must say that having to attend housing court is a traumatizing experience. Luckily, I am a tenant leader with the Flatbush Tenant Coalition, and with their support, I was able to navigate through the case. But unfortunately, there are a lot of families like mine that do not qualify for the right to counsel and do not have the support that they need when taken to court. With the state right to counsel, tenants will have an attorney to represent them, making the process less traumatizing. Tenants do not have to miss work, will be able to tend to their family's needs. Also, it will facilitate the understanding of the language used in court. So I've had experiences going to court, and I must say that for me personally, I was kind of confused and lost when I was in the courtroom. So I could understand what Marina was just saying. So we really need the state rights right to counsel to be passed to help New Yorkers to have a place to call home. So I really would like to thank everyone for the opportunity to be able to participate in this meeting. And thank you so much for listening and for helping us with this situation, because New Yorkers, we really need all the support that we can get. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucila. Next is Sierra, who is a lawyer with the Bronx Defenders.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Sia Hegde. I'm an attorney. Use she, her pronouns. I'm from the Bronx Defenders, and I work with the civil action practice. We belong to a large team of civil attorneys and advocates in New York City that received funding in 2017 to provide free legal assistance under the right to counsel law that we all, of course, know about. All of us here today believe and we validate that housing is a fundamental human right, and that the right to counsel is the cornerstone for our fight for housing justice. Lack of housing is a major destabilizer, and we see this from all aspects of our work at our holistic public defender office. It affects families, it tears communities apart, it will trigger cycles of intergenerational poverty, drive systemic structural racism, criminalize homelessness. It makes people susceptible to the shelter system and even the carceral system. And the right to counsel is about the right to due process. It's about making sure that every tenant has an attorney standing shoulder to shoulder with them, that they're aware of their rights, their defenses, their counterclaims, that they have a full and fair opportunity to fight not just against the violence of evictions, but also against inhumane living conditions, overcharges, terminated housing subsidies, oppressive predatory landlord behavior, inadequate supportive housing services, and any form of displacement from homes. And I want to emphasize that the statewide right to counsel legislation is more expansive than the city's, as much as we've benefited immensely from the city's leadership in this space over the last 4 years. Whether it's an in-person or a virtual first appearance, housing court is a dark and triggering place. It's not uncommon for tenants to be completely blindsided about the timeline of a summary eviction case before even going into this appearance. Housing litigants should have a lawyer with them prior to their first court appearance, which is what this bill would enforce. And they have to be guaranteed representation irrespective of the type of housing case. These tenants should not just be agreeing to judgments on their cases without an understanding of the defenses they can raise, again, the counterclaims, to get the case dismissed or even buy them more time if it's eventually a move out. They should not be penalized for failing to appear, given other responsibilities and stressors on their plate that go beyond the court walls. And they absolutely should not be penalized for, quote unquote, not falling within the income threshold or the income guidelines that are often very arbitrary. Those of us who have benefited from the right to counsel in New York City, and this includes tenants, come from various intersectional demographics and identities, low-income neighborhoods that have experienced long-term divestment, people of color, single parents, those with a history of homelessness or contact with the criminal justice system. Statewide Right to Counsel recognizes the rights of all of these communities to stay housed and to stay safe. And of course, more funding from the state means more lawyers and broad-based community support, both upstate and downstate. We are now in a post-eviction moratorium posture, which means that anything can happen at any time if we do not have the funding base to ensure that every tenant is given a right to counsel, know their rights going into court, and know how to fight that case. Good cause eviction legislation has not yet been passed. There is already a sharp uptick in cases that have been filed across the city and the state since 2 Saturdays ago. Statewide Right to Counsel with adequate funding for lawyers and oversight from an Office of Civil Justice would mean that we could collectively overcome this overcapacity issue that providers citywide are facing. So again, thank you so much for this opportunity. I just am so proud to be part of this fight with all of you. And let's keep this momentum going to make this a statewide reality. Thanks.
Thank you, Sia. Now we'll hear from Sharon.
May I say from Sharon?
Yes,
Hello?
she's a tenant and member of the Syracuse Tenant Union.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, Sharon?
My name is Sharon, but no, I'm not representing any agency. I don't know what category I fall up under because I was a homeowner who was about to be evicted through illegal foreclosure. My case is crazy, so I can understand the confusion because I was in my home for 33 years. A guardian was appointed for my husband, who's a Vietnam War vet, combat war vet, and upon going to housing court, the guardian didn't show up, and the judge said he was moving on with the trial. And I said, Your Honor, you have every right. You have to give my husband due process. And, because he doesn't have counsel, and your colleague appointed a guardian for him. And he moved on with the trial and gave the investors, by the way, who were featured in Queen's Craft, where they had priors to illegally evicting homeowners due to foreclosure. And this is what the investors did in my case.
Hi, Sharon. I'm sorry to interrupt you. This is Malika from the Right to Counsel Coalition. We have a tight program. And
yes, I know.
I'm sorry. And the next speaker is actually Sharon Mott, who's from Syracuse. So we're going to pass it on to her. Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, she's in the Syracuse Tenant Union.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Go ahead, Sharon.
Hello, my name is Shrama Vogelsang. I use she and her pronouns. I am a tenant from Syracuse, New York, where I have lived for 32 years. I had lived in an efficiency apartment in November 2012. I had asked the landlord to make some repairs to my unit because I had a baby on the way, and the unit was unfit for the baby to live in. The building was infested with bed bugs. The heat didn't work. We didn't have hot water, and we didn't have a refrigerator. We had a mini fridge with no place to cook food. So at that point, the landlord refused to meet with me to take my rent, culminating in a confrontation where he stated, What don't you get? We don't want you people here. He then took us to court to evict us, citing non-payment as the reason for our eviction. Even though we were able to prove that the landlord had been refusing our rent and that we had saved all of our rent money and was ready for him to collect it, a judge still ordered us to leave the apartment. I truly believe that if I had had a lawyer at that time, I would have been able to keep myself and my infant child from being homeless, as well as prevented my landlord from being able to unjustly evict us. Thank you for letting me speak.
Yeah, you're right, Sharon. You certainly would have had that right. Thank you very much for what you said. Next would be Natasha from the Flatbush Tenant Coalition. Natasha?
I don't think Natasha's on, Mildred, so you could go on to the next person and we can come back.
Hello, can you
Oh.
hear me? Hi.
How you go, Natasha? Yeah.
Hi, good evening. I am Natasha Worthen. I use the she, her pronouns. I am a tenant leader from the Flatbush Tenant Coalition in Brooklyn, New York, where I have lived for 13 years. And thanks to succession rights, my family has lived for 50 years since 1973. I am speaking today from personal experience about the importance of passing statewide right to counsel. I am a civil servant. I work for the city government, for the New York City Department of Education, and I am also a veteran. I am a civil servant. I am not rich fiscally. Thus, I do not qualify for New York City's right to counsel because of the income limits. I also have a lot of health issues. Thus, I'm over 50. And that means that sometimes I cannot work and my income falls below income restrictions during those times. I have long COVID and have gone through a lot of issues during the pandemic. And with all of that, I still have to fight my landlord. The building I live in, the landlord and our tenants have a very contentious history. I am a tenant leader fighting for repairs and against MCI rent increases. As a tenant leader, I am targeted often by the landlord in retaliation for my organizing and fighting. This landlord has me in court annually since they acquired the building. Always for non-payment of rent. Usually the case is just thrown out, but now he has started to claim that I have not submitted my lease for renewal. Pardon me. He has actually blocked me from remitting my rent through an online payment system, which the judge has granted during a rent stipulation mandate. Statewide right to counsel would give me legal right to a lawyer when my landlord targets me and takes me to housing court. It would also give my tenant association right to a lawyer to fight for all the repairs we need, all the repairs we should have before my landlord is allowed to get rent increases through major capital improvements. State right to counsel would allow us to organize. We will be represented by a lawyer when our landlord tries to retaliate or refuses to make repairs. Assembly members and senators, we need you to pass statewide right to counsel now. Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha, very much on that one. We appreciate that. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce Elena, a tenant and member of the Community Resource Center in Mamaroneck up in Westchester. Elena?
Buenas noches a todos. Mi nombre es Elena León. Yo vivo en Mamaroneck.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Elena Leon. I live in Mamaroneck for over 10 years,
En una casa.
and I'm renting an apartment in a house.
Del tema COVID.
And I didn't have any problems before COVID. We function as if we were one big family, all love and peace. What happened? The pandemic came. With the pandemic, work fell off first. I'm a mother, I'm a wife, and I'm a worker. We're a working family.
En limpieza de casa, lo primero que
But
hicieron es
because I work as a house cleaner,
anularme todos los trabajos.
the
Como
first thing that happened with the pandemic is to wipe out all my jobs. Families also stopped asking for childcare or nannying, so I ended up completely jobless. My husband too lost his work. So we started having trouble paying. The second month, we had to decide if we were paying rent or if we would eat. We were in complete quarantine. Nobody could go outside. So the problems began. And for us, the problems were really serious because the landlady started giving us problems. She said if they didn't have all the money stacked, the full payment, I could leave the apartment, that she didn't care about the pandemic. The important thing was for me to leave the apartment, to vacate the apartment. I have children, my children go to school. I also believed in humanity and that we could all understand each other and get along. I had no way to get employment to pay that rent.
No tenía,
So,
como le digo, ya para pagar la renta.
as I said, we didn't have the rent money. They told us if we didn't pay, we had to get out. No matter if there's a pandemic, there's no pandemic. That wasn't her problem. That was our problem.
Sistemáticamente comenzaron
So they began to systematically harass us, bother us aggressively at all times.
timbre, venían.
They would pound on the door, they would ring the doorbell. This is a woman that rents the apartment, but she brought her whole family, all her children would come to bother us, to tell us to pay the rent or leave the house.
Como dijo muy bien muchas compañeras, dijeron muy bien
As,
muchas de las
as
compañeras,
many comrades tonight said, you fall into depression, desperation. What do I do with my children? Where will I lay my head? Where will I eat? What will I eat? That's a permanent desperation. And one of the landlady's sons started posting signs up over my mailbox and over my door saying housing court should come here to evict people who are not paying their full rent. And they said, you can't pull down these signs because then we'll call the police on you and then you'll have trouble with the police.
También comenzaron a venir a molestar con que
And
se
they
va a vender.
started coming to harass us, saying that they would sell the house. And not only that, but they also brought people into our home that they said were potential buyers. during full pandemic, they would bring people into our home and photograph the apartment. And they said, since they were going to buy this, they had to see it. And they would check the bathroom, check the kitchen. And I said it was impossible because this is during a pandemic. The apartment is very small. We had to take care of ourselves. And I told them, I have to take care of you as well. They didn't care. We were still paying the rent in parts of the rent.
All right.
I went to the community resource center. I was desperate and I found help there.
Elena, thank you very much for that, but we have to terminate this now.
Necesitamos urgente abogado, es lo que te puedo decir, porque ahora mismo yo tengo.
We urgently need lawyers.
Correct.
No tengo abogado que me represente.
Because right now I have to move out and I have no lawyer and I have no way to pay for one.
Dios le bendiga.
Thank you very much for
Gracias.
just saying, we understand what you're going through. That's why we have this town hall that we want the legislators to hear your stories, because we want to see what's going on. We want it statewide because that is what's needed. But thank you very much to all of your stories we hear tonight. It's powerful and it highlights how much this is needed. And the right to counsel definitely is needed, very much so. You see what you've heard tonight. It's a tragedy, and housing is a human right. The tragedy that's happening to the people is the worst thing that could ever happen. So we have to ask our elected officials to make sure they pass this law, this bill, and make it into law that these people will not be homeless. I will now pass it over to Randy.
Okay, before I get started, you know, I'm a tenant and you know how we organize. I'm gonna ask Malika once again to unmute everybody. You understand? Yes, we gonna do this like we in the building. All right? I know we in our homes. I'm in my home. Okay. Now, when I say when landlords do us wrong, what I want you to say is we fight back twice as strong. Let me repeat that. When I say when landlords do us wrong, you say we fight back twice as strong. Are you ready? When landlords do us wrong,
we fight back twice as strong.
Fight back strong. Okay, let's try to get a little harmony now. When landlords do us wrong,
we fight back twice as strong.
When landlords do us wrong,
we fight back twice as strong.
Right, we fight back twice as strong.
Hi, Mr. Chaplain.
Thank you. Okay.
We fight back strong.
Yes.
Randy, you have to unmute now, or whoever.
Okay. I want to thank you, Mildred. We're ready to hear from our state assemblies and senators. Thank you for being here tonight. It's important that we hear from you. We need you alongside us in the fight to ensure that every tenant across the state of New York has the right to counsel. Can you commit to helping us get this legislation passed ASAP? We need sponsors of the state right to counsel legislation. A07570A S06678A. We need you to promote your colleagues to help sponsor the bill. We need assemblymen to get at least 3 other assemblymen to co-sponsor the bill and have them 3 try to get 3. We need senators to get 2 other senators to co-sponsor the bill. And we need y'all to push the Speaker Haston and the Majority Leader Cousin to bring it to a vote. Now I'm going to ask the assemblymen and the senators to speak. You got 2 minutes to speak, And those that are here tonight that haven't signed on, I'm asking you to sign on. And Malika, can you see what Assemblyman is getting ready to speak, or how you want to do this?
Yes, we'll invite any assembly members and senators who are here to just, you can jump in popcorn style and speak at this moment.
Malika, it's John McDonald.
Great, thank you, John.
Go ahead.
I want to thank all of you for your comments this evening. I want to thank your stories are real, they're sad, they're unfair. Bit of history. I was the mayor of the city of Cohoes for 13 years before I joined the assembly. I dealt with that conflict between tenants and landlords. And what was very clear to me is that tenants really had landlords had an unfair advantage over tenants. This is why I support right to counsel. This is why I fought for, with my colleagues, led by Latoya in our house, to make sure $25 million was added when we extended the moratorium eviction back in August. Here in the Capital Region, Legal Aid is our champion. They've received over $4 million to hire more counsel, to give greater representation, to help tenants ward off an eviction. The reality is this, I'm also a pharmacist, so I am very much into case management. We need to provide everybody the tools and the opportunity, because at the end of the day, eviction is traumatic, is patently unfair, and it's not good for the tenant and the children involved. And some landlords will actually admit it doesn't work out well for them either. So I believe this is the best way to go about this approach. I'm glad to be part of a coalition. I thank Latoya for her leadership in the assembly. I've nudged my partner in Albany, Pat Fahey, she's on the bill as well, and we'll continue to build more as well. Thank you very much.
I know we got some more elected officials. You heard the powerful testimony of our tenants. And if you feel what I feel, come on, let's hear from you. There is no assembly members or senators who want to speak.
Hi, Randy, it's just a reminder, the assembly majority is probably still in conference.
Okay, I didn't know that, but I know it now. That's what Jamie had said earlier. Okay, then I guess we will follow up with them and those that haven't signed on the bill and let them know how important that we need them to get through this ASAP. Now,
I believe a representative from Senator Myri's office is here. They're trying to unmute. They would like to speak.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Portia Edwards. I'm here on behalf of State Senator Delano Myrie. Just here to lend our support. We support the bill. We have support the bill as part of our housing package. And so, you know, we stand in unity with our tenants, and we just want to make sure that we can get this passed.
Thank you so much. Are there any other staff members that are here on behalf of the assembly members or senators that would also like to say a few words?
I want, I'm sorry, I should have let you know, I want mustard and ketchup and mayonnaise.
and we need you to mute your mustard and ketchup. Thank you.
Where's the hot My name is Yvette Lopez. I'm the Communications Director for Assemblywoman Maritza Davila. And as stated earlier, she is in session, but she does send her regards and she's in full support of the Right to Counsel bill. We know that this pandemic has shown us that a safe place to reside is crucial for one's physical safety as well as mental health. And it's good to have preventative measures such as the RTC bill that provides legal services to families and individuals who are facing eviction. So to end, she expresses her gratitude and appreciation for you all. So thank you so much.
Jamie, you gotta unmute yourself if you're trying to speak. From Latoya's office.
Hey there, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
How you doing there? My name is Chris Francis. I am the media coordinator on behalf of Assemblywoman Latoya Joyner. I would just like to say that all the stories, everyone's circumstance, everyone's experience that they were so careful to share today, I just want to say that we stand with you. Your stories, your unique circumstance, dealing with your particular situations, we're fighting for you. The Assemblywoman is in strong support of Right to Counsel. Unfortunately, she's still in conference right now. Would have loved to been here with you all, but you know she's fighting for you all up in Albany as well as in the Bronx too as well. We're doing our best right now to make this statewide for everyone. God bless. Stay safe, everyone.
And maybe I will finish out. I'm Senator Rachel May back. I was speaking at the very beginning, but I just want to say thank you to everyone who shared really important stories about why this legislation is so important. And my gratitude again to all of those who are working hard to make this happen. I think we're going to make it happen this year. So thank you again, Randy, Mildred, everybody.
Thank you, Senator. Okay, is there any more staff members?
I can speak for a few seconds. Hello, everybody. My name is Julio Herrera. I'm a community affairs representative for State Senator Rivera up in District 33. Here to extend his sympathy and solidarity to a lot of the stories that we heard today. I want you to know that on his behalf, unfortunately couldn't make it today. He will fight and continue to fight for everybody, for tenants' rights. And I also just wanted to quickly drop, if there are any Bronx-based tenants' rights organizations or anyone who does legal counsel for tenants, to just contact me. I believe I dropped my info there, just so we can have that connection established. Thank you.
Okay, is that everybody?
Hello?
Hello?
You got 3 minutes, Randy.
Okay.
Hello?
We got somebody.
Yes, can I speak, please? Can I speak?
Are you from Assembly office or Senator?
No, I am. Hello, I'm a citizen, I assume.
Okay, but we're getting ready to close up, and you can contact Malika or one of the organizers. Look at the chat, and their number will be in the chat if you got a serious problem and you need to talk to somebody. Okay? Now, I want to thank you, Assemblymen and Senators, and everyone who spoke and joined us this evening. As you heard here today, there are a tremendous need for the right to counsel across New York State. The moment for statewide right to counsel is growing. Cities and states across the country are running campaigns for the right to counsel. while looking to New York for an example. Washington, Connecticut, and Maryland recently passed the right to counsel statewide. Listen to what I just said. Washington, Connecticut, Maryland recently passed the right to counsel statewide. Minnesota, Nebraska, and Delaware are not far behind. With our state legislators now, New York has the opportunity to continue to lead the nation's right to counsel movement, make New York eviction free. To make New York eviction free and keep New Yorkers housed. Will everybody really understand what I just said? Why are we here and what are we doing this? And you see what other cities is doing behind what we are doing here. Thank everybody for coming out and supporting the right to fight for eviction-free New York. We applaud the bill, the sponsors, the senators, May, and Assemblymember Joyner for their dedication to make every New Yorker facing eviction has this right. Now, before I go to Judy, or I will end it right now and she can end it after the slides. We're gonna do one more chat. I'll turn it over to Judy. Okay. I think I have to read this. The Housing Court Must Change campaign meeting is on Zoom every other Thursday at 1 to 3. Everybody got that? That means we want to see you. Tenants must lead the fight to strengthen the right to counsel in New York City and expand the right statewide. Who can commit to coming to the meeting and help us win the right for all? You can put that in the chat. Okay. Once again, Malika, I got the call on you. Now make sure y'all put that in the chat if you're able to come to the Zoom, but I got a call on you to unmute everybody once again. Is everybody unmuted?
No.
No,
Kim, Kim is.
No, see.
Okay. I'm gonna say fight, fight, fight. And you say housing is a human right. Is everybody ready? Fight, fight, fight.
Ready?
Housing is a human right. Fight, fight, fight.
Housing is a human right.
Fight, fight, fight.
Housing is a human right.
Thank everybody for coming. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you, Wilson. Thank you, Malika.
Where's the information at?
Okay. Thank you.
Phone numbers, please.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Everyone. Good night.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Everybody.
Sí se puede.
Everyone.
Buenas noches.
Sí se puede.